Hello there, my name is Imac Gamer. Thank you for clicking on this video. I want to say in advance I spent a lot of time and effort researching this, playing through the different games. I actually went out and purchased a handful of them in order to play it, to make sure that my theory of this timeline being put together in one singular line was as correct as it can get. And I've also spoke to a friend of mine who was a big help at helping me figure out some of my own original logical fallacies. So this is a long project. I've had to record this video like 4 or 5 times. I originally wanted to have a lot more scripted bits into this, but audio's a pain in the ass some of the times. So thank you very much for even clicking on it. I don't know how long this video is going to be yet, but thank you all the same. And without further ado, the video. So first I'm going to talk about what I do not particularly like about the current timeline. First, the way it's structured seems to be less around telling a story and more around clumping like games together. The first section with Skyward Sword and the Minish Cap kind of gives that away. Origin of the Master Sword, Origin of the Four Sword, followed up by the Four Sword and Ocarina of Time. These two together tell me that there wasn't much of a story put through on these, because with Skyward Sword and a Minish Cap, you have next to no story cohesiveness. You go from a brand new city out of the sky to a pretty well-developed city already with aeons and aeons of mysticism. And I'm sure it's more than just one war, the interlopers, that would have lasted aeons and aeons. Now we're going to talk about the rest of these sections. This part right here, what is known as the Downfall timeline, is just all of the 2D games lumped together. You have A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, the Oracle games, A Link Between Worlds, The Legend of Zelda 1, and Link 2. The only thing these games really have in common are 2D. None of them even really fall into a sequel outside of the Oracle games. And it's not as well cohesive as like a story. There's no overarching story to it. While each one has its own story, none of them actually stitch together to create one smooth, flowing story. Then you have the Child timeline. The only thing I could say about this timeline is it's the 2 darkest games and then Four Swords Adventures. And what further doesn't make any sense is the concept of the split. Because the reason why you get the split at Ocarina of Time is the hero fails and the hero is successful. If that was the case, if that was the thing, you would have to do that for every single game in the franchise. So this should look more like a giant, aggressive spiderweb than a timeline. So let's just get into it. Let's just rebuild the timeline. First, Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword is a great jumping point and sets forth a lot of fantastic mechanics that are going to help build the timeline going forward. And even still, it's designed to be the starting point of the timeline. This was the game that introduced the timeline to the masses. So, we start with Skyward Sword. I also like the Twilight being banished afterwards, as well as the interlopers. It makes sense. Not only do they say that it happened after Skyward Sword, but it also coincided with the Hyrulean Civil War. And I believe they go in order like this. Now, they did say that the Twilight Banishment and the Civil War happened at the same time. They were almost the exact same event. But we know for a fact the Civil War happened before Ocarina of Time, immediately beforehand. So, I'm sure whoever the interlopers were, they were existing Hylians, freshly down from Skyloft, and these existing Hylians decided to try to get their own hands on the power of the Force. And then you add in the additional new kingdoms that the Hylians were getting settled into, I'm sure, Zora Kingdom, and the Kingdom of the Gorons that existed, as well as the other tribes that were on Hyrule while they were up in the sky, and you'd get a civil war. So, in order, they go, which leads us to Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is what most people blame as being causing the timeline split. I don't believe that it's strictly to blame for causing a time split, because I think it's just a misinterpretation of the ending of the game. When you get to the end of Ocarina of Time, what happens? And when Link leaves, somehow the door of time gets sealed. And how I think we could also interpret the ending of Ocarina of Time is Zelda sends Link back. Link is then teleported. Impa and Zelda were watching from afar to see when Link came out. Then they sealed the door of time. So what happened to Ganondorf? He was removed from the realm. He was removed from regular Hyrule, and he was put into the sacred realm. So what happens in the game when you remove something from one realm and you add it to another? It doesn't interfere with the realm that it was removed from anymore. Because if that was the case, everything that happens in these silent realms in Skyward Sword, namely those metal monsters that existed everywhere, would have also been in the physical world at the same time, and not just in that one realm. Same thing is true with A Link to the Past. What happens in the one realm doesn't happen in the regular world. While the physical world itself may inspire and interfere sometimes with the different realms, the physical people and characters that are in there do not interact with that realm. So when Zelda and Link sealed Ganon away in the sacred realm, he was sealed away and out of that timeline. That's it. He was sealed away and out of that realm. So when Link goes to the past, Zelda follows. She is magical. She does have the Ocarina of Time. Link sneaks his way back through the guards in the Sacred Garden, finds his way up to Zelda, and tells him he's leaving to go on a journey. And that journey is Majora's Mask. Just a slight interpretation that's a little bit more true to the in-game physics, and weaves a little bit more of a better story. So, after the Civil War comes Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And this also makes sense as a story timeline, because the Ocarina of Time Hyrule is actually kinda underdeveloped if you think about it. There isn't that much, and the kingdoms are all very young. So going from a brand new kingdom to a slightly more developed one adds a little bit more to the story of Hyrule as it's building. It's going from nothing into something. So what happened after Majora's Mask? We're gonna go to another timeline now and pull from the Imprisoning War. Now we know for a fact, because of Twilight Princess, that the hero of time dies in a war sometimes afterwards. And this is the only other war that's listed in the entirety of Hyrule's history. Now, it does add into the whole arc of Hyrule is growing and destroyed and growing and destroyed, and Demise's cursed demon Ganondorf comes back and goes away, comes back and goes away. This is also talking about the 7 sages that didn't exist up until they were first created in Ocarina of Time. Yes, I'm also saying Ocarina of Time was not a recreation of the sages, but their very first iteration. So, the Imprisoning War. So what comes after the Imprisoning War? Well, we know from the endgame story, A Link to the Past. So here you are several generations later, having to go into the Sacred Realm to patch up what your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Link did with Ganondorf in the future of Ocarina of Time. Sealed him away in the Sacred Realm for him to take it over. Just fix that. Alright, there. I wonder who that could be. Hello, operator, who is calling? Every Zelda tuber. Okay, put him on through. They must be calling to congratulate me on my work of fixing how Ocarina of Time ended. Hello, guys, it's such a pleasure to meet. Yeah, well, I know about his story, but the official timeline just doesn't settle well with anyone. You can't say that it settles well. You can't say that it... yeah, but like I said, it's not the time. I get it, it's a story. Well, that was productive. So let's just continue on. So, we left off with A Link to the Past. So, Hyrule in A Link to the Past is medium development. It's not super crazy. With A Link to the Past, the ending of it and the way everything is structured within that game, you're kind of left with an almost blank slate from where it can go from there. It can go in any direction. The direction I think it goes is Hyrule continues to extend its prosperity. It reaches back out to its surrounding neighbors, creates a little bit more of a kingdom again, and you get the events of Twilight Princess. Now, why does Twilight Princess make sense as the next one? Well, you have the Imprisoning War, where the hero of time dies for him to be able to teach his great-great-great-great-great-great-grand-nephew some tips or tricks as is required in Twilight Princess. It is far enough away from the ceiling of the Twilight that you have them to be able to create an entire world. You have developed enough of a technology, you have enough time for them to change their physical form, and enough time for a Ganondorf to be resurrected, sealed away, and giving them just enough of a disdain for the light world some centuries later, where most people don't care, that one crazy, aka Zant, to be able to get tricked in by Demise's curses Ganon, to be able to get tricked into restoring to a former glory from some far distant past. And Twilight Princess has found a home. So what do we see here again? From nothing to something to failure to rebuilding to something. A little bit more of an overarching story, as much as a Link, Zelda, and Ganon both rise and decline, and rise and decline, so too does the world of Hyrule in an almost same ebb and flow as Demise's cursed Ganon does. So, what can we say comes after Twilight? Well, we're now steeped in the world of multiple realms, A Link Between Worlds. I think it's actually a good fitting. Hyrule has a similar grade of development as it does in the Twilight Princess realm, and you're already dealing with time travel and realm travel, and you have a Ganondorf dying, in which case you're only working with Ganon's spirit in here that you guys dealing with. So it fits in pretty well as a post-Twilight Princess game. Which then leads its follow-up story, Triforce Heroes. I personally wanted to decanonize Triforce Heroes. This game really makes no sense. You're not doing anything with Hyrule. You have 3 different links, one of which came from A Link Between Worlds, 2 of which were time-traveling links. But I got to thinking, it makes sense because you've escaped Hyrule. You went away from Hyrule. So I decided to keep it. While you were away trying to get a princess her pretty pink jumper back, Ganon comes back and you have the need for the goddesses to flood the world. He's not going to come back. He's not going to come and save the day, as is told in the story at the beginning of Wind Waker, because he's far, far away in a different city, in a different area. None of the heroes that are available at that time are able to come and save, so the goddesses must flood the world. And of course, at the end of Wind Waker, you're back out on the open seas for Phantom Hourglass. Running out of room here. There we go. So what's the next game on our single N timeline? Spirit Tracks. No, it's not Spirit Tracks. It makes sense it would be Spirit Tracks. Spirit Tracks was the natural successor and the natural story in progression. But I got to thinking a little bit. After the end of Phantom Hourglass, Link and Tetra are on the seas to go find a brand new Hyrule. That requires little mini excursions to try to find a new land. Multiple trips out to many different little mini lands, some on a raft. And what happens if on that raft you get into a thunderstorm and the windfish creates Koholint to beckon your destiny? Yes, that's right. I think Link's Awakening would fit in perfect as a side story to what happens. I think Link's Awakening would fit in as a perfect side story. Would happen to Link during one of those little mini excursions. They're on their way to find a new Hyrule. And it really doesn't make sense where it currently fits in on the timeline with being after A Link to the Past. It doesn't make sense with being after A Link to the Past, and it has a lot of questions unanswered. Why did Link go sailing? To just relax before the next boss fight? There's supposed to be no boss fight. He's sealed away again, and why is he thinking the next boss fight? He's not going to be alive for the next time Ganon comes back around. And on top of that, he finds himself only on a log. How does he get back to Hyrule if he's only on a log? Is this the game where Link dies in that MatPat led to believe that Majora's Mask was a death story? No. What I think best explains this is Link was on an excursion while looking for new lands to call the new Hyrule along with Tetra. He gets into a thunderstorm. Tetra turns around to go to try to find him, and there she sees him sitting on a log after Link has saved the windfish. So then after that, yes, Spirit Tracks. And again, let's try to keep with the flow here. Hyrule is created. It is built up. It is thriving. It is destroyed. It is created, as you're supposed to do at the end. And what are some things that happened at the end of Wind Waker that we can do to create a new world here, in order to rebuild our new Hyrule? Well, the Master Sword's under the ocean. Ganondorf is nowhere to be found. He's stuck at the bottom of the ocean as well, trapped in stone. And you have a new world with new creatures that you've never experienced before. The Minish Cap, a brand new sword of evil's bane, a brand new supervillain, and a brand new land full of creatures and locations never seen before. And this is one of the only times I agree with the timeline, is that Four Swords comes after the Minish Cap. The Four Sword was created, and now we're in the age of the Four Sword. We're no longer in the age of the Master Sword as created by the hero of Skyloft. We're now in the age of the Four Sword, if you want to look at it that way. Which, yes, Four Swords Adventures, the logical sequel to Four Swords, finds its place on the single timeline. So what games do we have left to fit in? Oracle, Legend Zelda 1, Link 2, and the mess of Breath of the Wild, a game that doesn't have any home on the timeline. Well, one thing that we know about these games is that there is a Master Sword in there, and they didn't quite fit in the original age of the Master Sword as created by the hero of Skyloft. So, everyone knows that you end up recreating the Master Sword if you play Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, right? You know, didn't Nauru actually help you reforge the Master Sword, brand new Master Sword. And let's face it, this is a kind of thriving Hyrule. In a kind of thriving Hyrule era. There's nothing really thing that cataclysmically happens to Hyrule at this point. Nothing levels it, nothing really kills everyone else. So, age of thriving. Ganon comes back at the end of Four Swords Adventures in a very small way. So the goddesses need to recreate the Master Sword in order to get rid of the second wave of Demise's curse. And how do they do that? By becoming physical forms as the goddess Hylia did in order to forge a new Master Sword for the hero of ages and seasons. And you go on your timeline home. So now we have Breath of the Wild, Zelda 1, Zelda 2. Well, these two were made to stitch together. Now this is where you need to actually work with some imagination of sorts. In the 1980s, video game consoles did not have the sheer power that the modern day games have. Even the most basic 2D ones of the modern require a decent amount of power that wasn't really available in the 80s. So I can't fault The Legend of Zelda for being lacking in many different homes and different towns and different villages. But it is still Hyrule and it is still an age with the Master Sword. And with Link 2, a known sequel to this, Ganon, who was destroyed here, you can say the goddesses foresaw that the evil beast Ganon was coming back. They recreated the Master Sword just in time for the hero to slay him and to carry on his own adventure. Weird how Zelda 2 always becomes the last one of every timeline. So that just leaves us with Breath of the Wild. Namely, these four events in Breath of the Wild. You have what we can assume to be the sealing of Ganondorf, the 10,000 year event, Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild 2. Official cover art leak confirmed. I'm out of room again, so we're just gonna... You get the idea. So what am I gonna say happened after Link 2? In comes a new Ganondorf, who is sealed away with magic unknown. The 10,000 year event, Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild 2. A tale of Hyrule. A Hyrule that was born from nothing, thrived, was destroyed, was reborn, was destroyed, was reborn, was thriving, and, as we see in Breath of the Wild, was destroyed in a way that was never seen before. One cohesive timeline, one cohesive story. I think for all of us who are single timeline purists of the Legend of Zelda franchise, this is the most satisfying way the games and the events of Hyrule can be stitched together. And this is how I believe it goes. I don't care what the official timeline is anymore. This also allows for games to be created and fitted in, because let's face it, this was chaos. Every single game that came out after Breath of the Wild, you were going to need to add a whole new line onto this. Oh, what is it now? Hello, operator. Yeah, put them through. I get it, Historia. Thank you for sitting through all of that. Now, I would love to hear what you think about it in the comments. It would be great if you can give this video a like, share, and a follow. I have a plan on doing a full drawn-out story of the Hylian Civil War. And in that Hylian Civil War, I'm going to put out how I believe the creation of Ganondorf came as being the incarnation of Demise's curse, and further still, how it was a full civil war and what the interlopers had to do with it, as opposed to just putting them in an order. I wanted to do it for this video, I recorded it, but the story itself is like 30 minutes long. Thank you again for watching through all of this, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.